declaration of export and subsequent use of armed or strike-enabled unmanned aerial vehicles. What will be the impact of declaration on India? And where do India stand in this regard? What is the significance of drones? Why drones are need of hour for India? What should be the stance of India in US-led declaration? GS Paper 2, Effect of Policies and Politics of Developed and Developing Countries on India's Interests, Indian Diaspora. What is the context about? A group of 49 countries, led by the US, issued a joint declaration on the export and subsequent use of armed and strike-enabled unmanned aerial vehicles, hence constituting the first multinational effort towards creating an export control regime for drones. The principles which in their view should govern the export and use of armed drones, to ensure they do not cause instability or help terrorism and organized crime. The declaration will trigger a series of negotiations early next year, which will perhaps culminate into a formal agreement. What will be the impact of declaration on India? And where do India stand in this regard? Having joined the Missile Technology Control Regime, MTCR, recently, the door is open for India to buy or export armed unmanned aerial vehicles that carry missiles with a range equal to or greater than 300 kilometers. Signing up of a declaration will invoke exclusionary export control regimes. Thus India has called for following objectives in joint declaration: to confirm the applicability of international law, to promote the responsible export of armed drones in line with existing relevant international arms control and disarmament norms, to ensure that the export of armed drones is done in line with principles of existing non-proliferation and export control regimes, taking into account the recipient country's history of adherence to relevant international obligations. To ensure the export of armed drones is reported through current channels with appropriate voluntary transparency measures. To discuss the possibility of setting international standards for the transfer of unmanned aerial vehicles technology. India can reap following benefits from drones. Monitor crop insurance coverage as envisaged in Kisan crop insurance scheme. Can help India be a leading manufacturer and exporter. Can help in counter-insurgency operations in Northeast as it is a rugged topography and difficult for human surveillance. Can be used in border security. Can also be useful for the industrial sector for surveillance of highly critical projects and also railway track surveillance as is already being done. Why drones are need of hour for India? Given the complex security challenges that India faces, the role of unmanned aerial vehicles in providing critical intelligence will be a key enabler not only in fighting wars effectively, but also in deterring cross-border terrorist attacks. India needs drones for surveillance purposes in border and Naxalite-affected areas, and, thus, India should make sure that the regime is in line with its requirements. What should be the stance of India in US-led declaration? At a time when India is seriously looking at expanding the use of drones in its military strategy, serious thought needs to be given in New Delhi on what role it wants to play in the emerging regime to manage the use and export of drones. Unlike in the past, as a global regime on drones is put in place, India's voice should be a determining one, not one that is marginal and out there in the wilderness. New Delhi should be engaging with other like-minded countries to come up with its own principles to guide the emerging global order on drones and their use. India should be at the front and center of this discussion so that its own interests do not get marginalized as a new regime on the use of drones is put in place.